When I was asked to talk at this TED Talk about the theme Charged for Change, I figured that they wanted me to discuss overcoming my fears. Because when I think about what I'm most scared of, change is right up there with airplanes, highways, and public speaking. But I wanted to do this speech because it wasn't going to be in front of a whole bunch of adults. It was going to be in front of kids. And I knew that this was a speech that I wish someone gave me when I was your age. When I was 7 years old, I remember walking through a department store with my mom. And she looked back at me, and it's the first time I ever remember her asking me this. She said, "Mikey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, "A rock star." She looked at me with this look of concern and confusion. And she was like, "Oh." And I was like, "Well, you know, the fans, being up on stage." I didn't know how terrifying the stage thing would be. That was exactly what I wanted to be. And I learned from her response to maybe answer that differently in the future. I learned how to read people, and I learned how to tailor my response to whoever was asking. "Sure, Dad, I want to be an engineer when I grow up." "Yep, I'm going to be president of the United States." "I would love to be a priest, Nana." But the truth was, as I got older, that question got more and more terrifying. It got to the point when someone would ask me what I want to be when I grew up that I would clench up. And I knew that the time was coming where I had to make that decision. Even asking me what I wanted to major in college, even asking me what college I wanted to go to. I actually could not decide what college I wanted to go to. I put housing deposits down on 2 universities. I had roommates in 2 universities calling me and asking me to get things set up. And I'm like, I don't even know which of the 2 of you I'm going to. Until August. And so it got really scary. And I didn't know that it was okay to be scared. I spent 13 years of schooling working on building this boat. And this was the boat that I was going to put out on the seas, and I was going to go out and explore. I was going to find a destination, and I was going to travel to that destination. And I built a great boat. I worked hard in high school. I made sure that I had as many opportunities available to me as I could. And just didn't know which of the opportunities interested me most. So I built this awesome sailboat. And I looked at my grandfather, and he was kind of one of my role models, and he owned a small refrigeration business, and that was his passion. He learned how to take apart a refrigerator and put it back together when he was in the Navy, and he came back from the Navy, opened up this little shop, and spent the next 50 years working at AAA Appliance. And he seemed to love what he did, and he got to the end of his life, and it seemed like a life that was well lived, and I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I needed to find my small appliance repair shop. The unfortunate thing was I built this awesome boat, and I forgot to put a steering wheel in it. So I put my boat into the water as I finally decided on college, and I was like, great, I don't know where I'm supposed to go or how I'm supposed to get there. So I was a business major. That was my first of 4. And I don't know why I was a business major. I never took a business class. I think I just picked something to pick something. That was probably the response that gave most people smiles when they asked, "What are you going to major in?" Business? "Oh, okay. Yep, business. I'm going to major in business." So I started as a business major, and around my sophomore year, I was in an accounting class, and I remember sitting there going, "Nope, this is not for me. Nope, I got to pick something else." And at the time, I took a class that was a general education class, and it was called Infectious Diseases and Disorders. And something was sparked. Horrifyingly enough. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And everybody else in my class is like, this kid's a weirdo. But I really loved it. And so I went to talk to the professor, and I said, "Hey, I really like your class. You know, I think this is better fit for me than business." She said, "Maybe you should look into biology. By the way, this class won't count for your major." All right, so I switched to biology. I turned as best as I could this ship towards the idea of biology. And that was met with happiness in my household because my parents said, "Hey, that's great. You're going to go into dentistry or medicine?" And I'm like, yep, that. And so I was set on medical school. And one of my cousins at the time was in medical school. And she said, "Mike," she said, "it's tough, it's hard, but you know what? You're going to love it as long as you're passionate about it." What? Passion? I like it. Is that enough? She's like, "As long as you're passionate." Wonderful. All right, so I was set for medical school until I took a seminar that was given by a bunch of different physicians who were in all different fields. And so these physicians talked about their daily lives, and I went to a hospital and I shadowed some physicians, and I really got a better idea of what being a doctor was. And I remember imagining my ship crashing against the shores of reality when I figured out that medicine, it wasn't going to happen for me. It wasn't my passion. Still didn't know what my passion was. So I narrowed it down. I was like, all right, what can you do with a bio major? You can be a doctor, be a dentist. Oh, be a researcher. I'll go be a researcher. So I got a job in a neuroscience lab. It turns out I don't have the personality for research. I'm a little too talkative. I also wasn't really that charged up about what I was doing. And so that didn't work either. And so I'm sitting there with my advisor, and I'm a senior in college. And my advisor's like, so what are you going to do when you grow up? Stop asking me that. She's like, but you have to make a decision because, you're going to have to get a job someday. I know that. So I'm sitting there thinking, where's my small appliance repair shop? And I decided to go to law school because that's what everyone with a bio major does. And so I went to law school, and I'm thinking, well, this is the business major again. Did people just say, oh, lawyer, that sounds good? And so you just followed it? Idiot. And so I started law school, and I thought, okay, you know what? This might not be the right choice, but this is a choice. You are making a decision. You are saying this is a career. You are pointing your ship towards a career, and at the end of the day, at least you're making a decision. Unfortunately, the first day of law school came, and it was me and law school. My older daughter would probably put it this way. Me and law school went together like lemon juice and your eye. And I felt like for 3 years, every day of my life was pouring lemon juice into my eyes. But you know what? I stuck with it because I thought, all right, at this point, if I change again, someone's going to kill me, and it's probably going to be my mom. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to make this work. Maybe this is what passion is. Maybe passion is finally deciding on something and following it through. And maybe you discover passion later in your life. Okay, I can buy into that. So I'm on my ship, and I'm steering towards a life in law, which was actually worse than law school. And at some point, I'm just like, this doesn't work. There's got to be something else. And so my firm started a volunteer program where it was called Philadelphia Reads. And they would bring in inner city kids to the firm, and lawyers would partner up with them. And during the day, Thursday afternoons, we would get some time off, and we would go and mentor these younger students, help them with their reading skills, talk to them, give them someone to look up to, that kind of thing. And Thursday afternoon became the highlight of my week. I looked forward to the idea of mentoring kids so much more than anything else in my life at the time. I was also put on a medical team at my firm that we were trying to figure out, whether or not our client, who was a big drug company, whether their drug was the proximate injury of these plaintiffs, whether the drug was the proximate cause of these plaintiffs' injuries. And so we're sifting through thousands of pages of medical records, and it turns out not a lot of lawyers have bio degrees. And so I got to teach them about anatomy and physiology. I got to say, hey, here's how the renal system and the circulatory system might come together, and here's how we can figure out whether or not this was the injury. And something clicked, and I realized I really, really liked being back in biology, and I really enjoyed teaching. Not lawyers, but I enjoyed teaching. And so I went back to get my master's in education at night while I was a lawyer, and for the last 5 years, finally learning to embrace change, that it's okay to change, that it's not a bad thing to constantly change. For the last 5 years, I have lived my passion every single day that I've been in the Downingtown STEM Academy. No matter how tough the day is, I understand what people say when they say find your passion and you will never work a day in your life, because that's how I feel. And in teaching bio, I've learned that there are people a lot more famous who have done a lot more than me, whose paths kind of mirror mine. And one of them is Johann Mendel. And Johann Mendel grew up the poor son of a farmer. He was the only son of the farmer, so his life was going to be farming. And Mendel's like, yeah, I like farming, but Dad, what do you think about me being teacher? Lofty profession. And his dad's like, yeah, or farming. Farming works too. And he's like, no, I want to go off University of Vienna. I'm going to be a teacher. It's going to be wonderful. And his father's like, yeah, we don't have money anyway. And his sister's like, well, I have a dowry. I can give you my dowry. That's like, they give money for taking the daughter. It's an old thing. She said, you take my dowry money, go off and be a teacher. And Johann's like, all right. And so he takes her money, happily, and he goes off and he becomes a teacher, and he is now remembered as the world's greatest teacher. Nope. Mendel went off to the university, sat for his teaching certification exams, and failed. He built himself a big, beautiful boat that sailed towards teaching, only to be crushed by the tsunami of reality, that he was not meant to be a teacher. And Mendel was like, no, I'm not done yet. I still think this is what I'm meant to do, but I need to pay my way through, so now I'm going to join an abbey. I'm going to become a monk. And they're like, all right, we're going to name you Brother Gregor. You're going to be Gregor Mendel. And so Mendel becomes a monk, and he gets back into something he liked from the beginning, which was gardening, farming. It wasn't his passion, but he still liked it. And so he starts a little garden outside of the abbey. He grows him some pea plants. And he's excited about growing these pea plants. And he's like, look at that. Sometimes I take a small pea plant and a big pea plant, and I get big pea plants. He's like, well, wait a second. I take a small pea plant and a big pea plant, and I make big pea plants. He's like, this flies in the face of everything we're teaching in universities. I may not be a teacher, but I know things. And I know that you tell me that when we take small pea plants and big pea plants, that we make medium pea plants, and that is clearly not true. So give my peas a chance. So he runs through 10 generations, 100 generations, 1,000 generations, 10,000 generations of pea plants, decades of work, observations, journals that he noted all of this in. We remember Gregor Mendel not as a should-have-been farmer, wanted to be teacher, ended up being a monk. We think about him as the father of modern genetics. His contributions have changed the lives of billions of people for the better because his path wasn't straight to a small appliance repair shop. Charles Darwin, another example. Similar experience, but vastly different boat. Because you see, Charles Darwin grew up the wealthy son of a world-renowned physician. And Charles Darwin's father helped him build a big old gold boat. And that was a beautiful gold boat. And he put a nice steering wheel in, lucky for Darwin. Except his dad didn't let his steering wheel turn. He put him in the boat and he said, you are headed to the University of Edinburgh, the best medical school in the world at the time, and you are going to become a world-renowned physician. And Charles Darwin's like, yep, Dad, I'm going to be a doctor, just like you. And he gets to the university and he's taking his medical school classes, and it's like me in accounting. Totally bored. He's like, I got to seek out other options. So he takes a class in taxidermy, which is preservation of formerly alive organisms. It's kind of like making your own stuffed animals. And he's really interested in this. And he takes a class in that, and he's like, oh, this marine researcher over here, he's really cool, and he's interested in like how species change over time. I'm going to do this. And his dad's like, hold on a second. You weird taxidermy marine bio. I'm going to take you away from your stuffed animals, and I'm taking you out of this university, and you're going to the University of Oxford. And at Oxford, you're going to study to become a parson, which is kind of like a priest. Darwin's like, all right, turn my boat. And there, he's like, yeah, this is about as much fun as medicine. And so he thinks, all right, instead, I am going to find things I like. I'm going to take a course in geology because I like to learn how Earth's masses have changed over time, and I'm going to get into the newest craze at the time, which was beetle collecting, of course. And so he's got, all these different kind of beetles from all around the world, and he's like, look how different they are. I'll trade you my beetle for your beetle. And just like the original Beatles. They rocked. All right, so he learns all these things he likes, and his buddy Robert Fitzroy comes along and goes, hey, do you want to take a little journey on a sea cruise with me? And Darwin's like, yeah, sure. Let's get away from this parson education for a little while. And so he takes this sea cruise all around the world, and all along the way, he's collecting different specimens. And he's like, oh, I'm going to get back to my taxidermy, and I'm going to make little stuffed animals. And he's down in his cabin, playing with his little stuffed animals. And he's thinking, because there's a lot of time when you're going port to call. And so he's thinking about, look at that. This finch from South America kind of looks like this finch from the Galapagos. And the Galapagos, according to all of my research into geology, the Galapagos is a new thing. Like centuries ago, it wasn't here. So where'd the finch come from? It must have come from South America. All right. So it came over from South America to the Galapagos, and then it changed. It changed. And Darwin made these observations, and he realized that he discovered something profound. That life, species begin down one path. And because the world changes, the species has two options: go extinct or adapt. We look at Darwin now not as a should-have-been doctor, wanted to be taxidermist, oddly enough, a sailor. We look at him as the father of modern evolution, and we look at how evolution has helped us understand better who we are and where we came from. Darwin told us that life begins down a certain path, and that to adapt, to change, we have to be open to doing so. It's kind of a profound message for me. It reminds me of my other passion, which is running. Running's always been there for me. Every moment of my life that I haven't liked, I've been able to at least look at running as the one thing in my day that works. And I will next week compete in my 7th marathon. And training for a marathon requires ridiculously long training runs, 15, 17, 20 miles. And fortunately enough, we live in southeastern Pennsylvania, which is a perfect place to go for runs because we have so many beautiful trails around here. Chester Valley Trail, everybody ever gone on that one? It's really nice. It's a runner's paradise. I mean, it's flat, it's paved, it's wide, and there's always people around. There is no place I hate running more than Chester Valley Trail. And the reason is because for long stretches of it, I can see exactly where I'm going. I can see where I have to go and how long it's going to take me. Last week, I ran the Kennett Square Half Marathon. Vastly different. I had never run in Kennett Square before. If you haven't run there, it is incredibly hilly. And I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know left, right. I didn't know the challenges or the hills that were coming up. Every time I got to a hill, I was like, another one? This is number 17? But I knew by then that by the time I got to the top of that hill that there was going to be a glorious downhill, and that was going to feel good. And I think about that in my life and how embracing change and understanding that the more I'm willing to turn left or turn right and take on that challenge, how that has helped me discover what my passion is and to learn to enjoy the run. Thank you.